Hello everyone, Richard Miller, Never Not Here, moving through Australia. And I'm here a very short time, less than a week. And so far it's been very powerful for me, and very fast. Somehow I must have let go of something so that I can allow this river of life to flow in a way that seems rare, but maybe it's not. So, help me welcome Pratima.
Nice to be here.
I'm so amazed. Really, I don't know why another country would affect me so much.
It's a good country. I think it'll be one of the main countries that helps the evolution of consciousness on the planet, and in particular the women. You do know that the Dalai Lama recently said that it'll be the Western women that make consciousness more available for the world. Did you hear that?
No, I didn't, but it's exciting. I've always kind of believed in that, but I've never been an authority to get anyone to believe me.
Yeah, he's got that authority. So, but I think particularly Australia as well, because we're such a small population in such a huge country with a lot of resources and not too much debt. So we'll manage one of the better of the Western countries.
I've been thinking about small countries because I've been thinking about Scandinavia, and even as small as Iceland, which is 200,000. And I was thinking it's like somebody's got to make a beta test. Somebody's got to, which means like an experiment, a new experiment in society. And it's going to be too hard for like a 200 or 300 million person country to just swing in with a bunch of changes.
Yes.
And so then either those changes would have to come in the community, and maybe some communities in America are actually developing green strategies.
Yes, plus their own currency. I think, is it Baltimore? One of the areas has got quite a successful currency where there's already been 5 million or so exchanged in these notes that they've created locally.
Yeah.
So local currency.
I don't know the details of that because it's not like the laws allow us just to start printing money. That was something that happened in the colonial days, that states and other people printed.
Yeah, but there are a lot of local currencies in America that are working, so it isn't being outlawed.
I think you call it a script or something like that, or a barter trading.
Yes, it's
it's
a barter trading situation.
So I haven't researched the laws on what's possible and what's not, I would, I can remember the time when I lived in Italy when the euro went in. So then for maybe a year, you could buy things both in euros and in lira.
Yes.
So I don't see why there couldn't be more than one kind of currency, And then basically I'm saying that some people want a kind of a stability, and they don't want speculative growth or speculative losses.
Yeah.
But we're tied to a currency that has to serve both those people that want stability and those people that want to speculate.
Yes.
And so I wonder if something like that could happen where...
I think it's a great solution to have another economic system that doesn't have any of the speculation, because it's the speculation that's causing the problems. They're speculating that Greece will fall. They've all got their bets. It's just another form of gambling, isn't it?
No,
very absolutely,
absolutely.
So
absolutely, because you sell short all the time in the market. It's called hedging, and hedging has a useful purpose. But then, when that hedging is there, then it can be also a zero-sum game too. And you can actually, some players in the markets, in the currency markets, are big enough to actually force things.
Yes.
Because they have two characteristics they call price takers. Most people are just small individuals, they're price takers. And whatever we buy in the market, we take the price that's there. But then there's, with big movements, big monetary movements, that's called a price maker. And then that's where, like regulation, or that should be a government job to make the prices.
But they're not regulating very much, are they? Aren't they letting the banks just do whatever they want?
Not exactly,
Hence
but I
the
mean, it's
trouble.
pretty. It's you know, we don't know. I don't know exactly where all that is.
They have started regulating a bit now in Europe, but I don't think Obama did much regulation after the 2008 crash. I don't think there's very much. The banks are too powerful for the government to have much say. I
Well,
get the
they took a
feeling.
lot more say, you know, because when they put the money in there to bail them out, then they didn't
Yes,
just
they
do that for
must have.
free. You
Yeah.
know, they just say, "Here's a credit card, have a ball.
Right.
Daddy loves you."
Yes, that's right. But it was looking a bit like that.
Yeah. Well, actually, it's not, you know, because Paulson was the Secretary of the Treasury, and he was saying that Wall Street has to police itself.
Yes, but they're never
No,
going
wait a
to
second.
police
No, let me
themselves.
tell you what it said. And then, so then, that was when Lehman Brothers was on the blocks, because the Lehman Brothers was so full of toxic assets, and they didn't know what was going to happen. Now, I don't know total. This is something generic along what happened. You know, I don't really know detail for detail for detail. So then he just said, "Okay, you guys police yourselves," right? And nobody stood up. Nobody came up to the plate, and Lehman Brothers went down. And then I think after that weekend, the markets stopped trading for maybe 2 days. There was no trading whatsoever, or the volumes were so far down that you know it was like the whole system broke.
Yeah.
And then Paulson, you know, and it's really radical what was happening. In other words, he thought, "I'm the man," and that brought the world monetary system down. Like so many tons and truckloads of guilt went on him that he quickly scrambled to change his mind. And that's when I think he made a move to Bank of America that they had to buy number 2 that was going to fail, which was Merrill Lynch.
Yes.
And they forced him to swallow Merrill Lynch. And in a way, Bank of America bought into it because Bank of America is from Charleston, North Carolina, and he was kind of proud that a little bank in a small city could take over Wall Street. So then his pride kind of killed him, because then there were so many toxic assets.
And what was his name? Do you know,
I forgot.
Mm.
He was the CEO of Bank of America, and they fired him over the deal because so many debts came out of Merrill Lynch that really put Bank of America in big trouble. And they were all hidden. But that's just, you know, so Paulson did that, and then that's when they bailed them all out. That's when they started to put trillions of dollars into the banking system. And they just did it with notes. They bought their paper.
Yeah.
They bought the
Printed
bank's
some more
paper,
money,
you know,
yeah.
and then they said, "Okay, here's all this capital. Do something right with it."
What about the possibility of the Federal Reserve being government owned? Is that something you see as a good alternative, a possible alternative to solve the spiraling problems that are going on? I don't really understand why the money should be owned by a private company.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm not qualified to comment on that, really. You know, I don't know. I mean, a lot of things can happen. That's an institution that happens to work that way, and it seems like there's a huge amount of favoritism there because, you know, somehow they're in the feeding chain, right? And whatever happens, they get their fees or their shares. And I don't really want to go talk about too much about what I don't know, and just kind of.
Well, what I do know is there is this money trading schemes. There's a big one in Melbourne, and there was a lady, for example, that actually built herself a whole house on this credit system. So she was a school teacher that people knew in the community, knew she was reliable. She'd been there 40 years, and so many people. The builder came in and said yes, he'd work so much in exchange for something she could give, and she actually built a whole house just on this trading scheme. So it is possible on quite a large scale, you know, not just you come and do your garden and I'll cut your hair. You know, you can get bigger. So I think that's a good alternative, a good way to go. So getting back into a very localized economy, and also banking with your very local banks, with your local credit unions, where hopefully you know that they're not actually investing in derivatives and in the huge corporations. So you have a way of. So I think that's one alternative. Before we change the system totally, I mean, the system can't sustain itself. You can't just keep working on debt, you know. So, and there are systems. There is Shahira banking. There was a period in China. There was, I think, a period in America, even early stages, when, you know, we weren't running on this debt system. So there are alternatives, and it's not that long we've been doing this. The Federal Reserve was created in 1913, so I think things started to deteriorate from there on. But I feel like we need to come up with a radical new monetary system, and I don't know what the answers to that are. But I'm sure somebody must in that world. The only thing is you have to do what Einstein said, is you have to sit outside of the paradigm you're in to find the solution. You can't find the solution within the same system. You know, you have to make some kind of leap. So it normally needs somebody outside of the box to come up with the solutions. You're not going to get the bankers who are fixed in that working hypothesis to come up with a totally new system. I doubt it. We need to look
Isn't
outside.
that kind of a definition of spirituality? Trying to get out of the Einstein box and trying to work on and find out what is the root for our behaviors, what is the root for our relationships, what is the root for our self-esteem, and how we hold ourselves and carry ourselves, and
Yes.
what is the root for our behavior. And
well, in the sense that you can't be in your own, strongly identified with your own personality, and then try and see the solutions from the perspective of your personality. You have to step out. You have to do what the Zen monks of all these centuries did, and actually go and take yourself out of your personality by sitting in the cave or in the monastery for 12 years if you're a Zen monk, or in the Himalayas silently for years if you're an Indian sadhu, and only then can you find the inner wisdom or inspiration to be able to see through your conditioning and your ancestral conditioning and your natural DNA response, and just come up with something new. So yes, I think is the answer to that.
so you phrased it in a way that was traditional, right? You say you have to get out of your personality, step out of it, and the ways that the Zen tradition spoke of monasteries or separation and so on. But I mean, is that true?
Well, that is the old way, and I think that as consciousness is developing and increasing quite quickly at this present time, there is now a new way to do it. And I once asked the Dalai Lama that very question. I said, you say in Buddhism that until the last person has crossed over the bridge, you can't all be free, but could it not be possible for somebody to spontaneously awaken? So that's looking at the Advaita tradition and also at some branches of Tibetan Buddhism where there is a possibility of just awaking spontaneously. And his answer was, he said, well, yes and no. In the relative world, we need people to follow traditions, to feel like they're doing something towards the development of their consciousness, to study, to meditate, and so on. And at the same time, there is definitely the possibility of somebody spontaneously awakening. So, for example, my master, who was Papaji in the lineage of Ramana Maharshi, which is an Advaitic tradition, is saying that, if you really become still in this moment now, it's enough. That if you really you can have a glimpse, like a eureka moment, where you see the truth of your own being in that moment. And then it's rather like riding a bicycle. Once you've learnt to ride a bicycle, even 50 years later, you can pick up a bicycle and you still know how to ride it. You got it.
So there's a knack to it, some kind of a knack. We call it a knack. That means like it's not a learning, but it's somehow a bodily response to.
I wouldn't even say it's a knack. I'd say it's a revelation. It's a moment that just comes on you. And
okay, then once you have that revelation, there's a knack to walk back to it. There's somehow when you're back there, or something. What?
Well, you certainly know when you're in that space, and there's a recognition of being in that space, and a recognition when you're out of it. But I think when you're in that space of all acceptance of whatever is, then as soon as the mind comes in and starts thinking about it too much, you can be out again, because it's not a process of the mind. So the mind immediately comes in and makes it past tense or future tense. and never really leaves it being now.
Isn't there a bigger context? Because you're speaking of a certain experience that's very clear, right? But there's a bigger context of just normal humanity that would have expansion but also contraction.
And I think it's part of the process for all of us, expansion and contraction. Even the great gurus, I feel they also had their expansions and contractions. And so even though the ground of being has been recognized and they know who they are, there still is room for personality to do its momentary digression.
Well, that's what I'm trying to say, is like a bigger context, see, because we're saying, okay, in that narrow, it's kind of a narrower context of just that pure clarity, that pure clarity. And then we're defining, oh, that's what life is. That what life is, this space where everything unfolds, But somehow, what if we had a bigger context and just said that real awakening was going into that space and out of that space freely, with liberty,
Yes, that's nice.
Not saying I got to get there or I got to get back there,
That's very nice, yes.
And does anybody talk like that?
Well, you just did. That was great.
I never said it before. I don't know. Maybe just got inspired here.
I think that's really, really, really a key, because as soon as you're attached or identified with this is it, I got it, this is the space, this is it, you're out of it. Because it's always going to be a continual development, a continual unfolding, or a continual revelation.
No, even that. Now let's cut back from that, because even that means we're always raising and raising and raising, right? But I'm not saying that. We're going this way and we're going that way, and we're going. The bigger context is just life. Now,
and I also don't really want to say raising.
I know, but you're saying that when
Yeah.
you say unfolding already, that means we're getting deeper or something like that, right? Or rising up in our consciousness, or that's what's automatically put there, right? And so then you're saying, well, yeah, but I'm not getting any deeper. I'm just going in and out like always. And then there's some kind of dissatisfaction and some kind of judgment. And let me say this, because I want to give another kind of a metaphor, because I was coaching golf. And I'm not a golfer, but I was just being the video part of it. So I was in the link, right? And so then I realized that if you have too tight of expectations before you take a shot, an automatic reaction is a judgment, and and then a judgment, a disappointment, and a tightening on your next shot.
Yes.
Okay, say you want to hit the pin, and I'm going to hit the pin, see? And then you go to you're never going to hit the pin, because how many times are you going to hit the pin? You make a hole in one every other year or something like that. So then you're going to be a little bit to the right or a little bit to the left. And just because you said I'm going to hit the pin, there's going to be a judgment. Oh, that's too far to the left. Then the next shot is going to be, there's going to be some kind of cramping in your neck or something that's going to try to tweak right.
I think that's the key is within that, in that, because we always will have mind and it serves us greatly, it's a question of how quickly mind can drop that discomfort.
No, listen to this. See if you like this, because I'm going to go a little farther. Because if, on the other hand, you say, no, I'm not trying to hit the pin, I'm just trying to place the ball, it doesn't really matter if it's here, 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 or here, you got to make a second shot. And you just realize that anywhere in that range, when the ball lies there, and so then you don't know where it's going to land until it lands, right? So it lands, excuse me, and then there's no judgment, there's no thought, you're still in the zone, you're still totally in the space, you're still no anxiety, no kind of judgment, no tightness, and golf all depends on the geometry of the body, and just repeating that geometry again and again. And when you put any kind of a tweak of a mind in there that says, oh, I should have done this, or I could have done that, or I gripped too tight, or I did this, you'll be trying to counteract it automatically, because that's the job of the mind, see? So you're saying, well, when the mind lets go, but I'm saying even before, if you have no expectations on the beginning.
Yes.
A lot of times golfers will say the best way to play golf, when you study, you practice, all that stuff, but when you get up to the ball, don't play golf. That's the last thing you do is play golf. Right?
So just relax with it.
Yeah.
Just
to be
yourself.
and be in, and that's, you find the zone, what they call the zone in sports.
Yes. Yeah. That's right. Well, if you can do that, fantastic. But I think one of the, we feel as if we're going backwards and then we're evolving again and we're going backwards. But I think often when I look at my own life, for example, I can see that things that would have created a longer reaction in me previously don't do that so much anymore. So there is a certain letting go, and that can come over years of just seeing that it isn't really that important in the end, and so you can relax more. So the instant reaction comes, but then it doesn't stay with you for a few hours or a few days or a few weeks or a few years if your wife just left you, that actually you can allow it to pass through much more quickly.
Sometimes it just takes a hint, you don't know that's an option, to just say, hey, my wife's free. Freedom is the most precious gift I could give her.
Yeah. That's right. If you can find that space, and hopefully that space comes straight away or very quickly, but in most people it takes a little time.
Yeah, but I mean, like I say, first they have to know it's an option. Someone has to give them a hint. You could say, hey, you could notice that you just gave her the best gift you ever could have imagined. You say, oh yeah, right, I did actually. I gave her freedom without any attachments or resentments or any kind of energy that I'm throwing at her.
Yeah. And then you become really good friends almost instantly, and life rolls on.
Right.
Yeah.
I think, okay, we started coming in on this part of our discussion by saying that Einstein said you got to get out of the context of the problem.
Yes.
And I said, isn't the grand context breaker called spirituality? And then, because that's not just going from one economic system to another or trying to find another monetary system or something like that, but that's really trying to find out what makes a human look like we think they look. What's the key that unlocks our behavior patterns and relationships. And I think a lot of our listeners would like to hear more about Papaji and your experience with Papaji, because I think there's a tremendous interest about that, and we all believe in Papaji because so many of his lovers, are actually talking about and sharing what they got from him. And so then we think, in our terms of like efficiency, he's a really good master because he makes a lot of people aware.
That's right.
And other masters apparently say nothing really works. You can't you can lead the horse to water but can't make him drink kind of thing, right? But what is it about Papaji that was so magnetic and so effective?
Well, he was a master of devices. He was rather like, you could say, a Zen master, where you could never predict. You might be in a satsang, a talk with him each morning he held his satsangs, and 10 people might have gone up in front of you, and he's laughing and playing with them, and you think, great, this is a good moment to ask my question, I'll go up. And you go up and he just slaughters you, cuts your head off with a veritable knife. So you could never, but he'll come in with some unpredictable way, sometimes in words and sometimes in actions, where he just is going to give you that sudden wake-up call that can propel you into your own freedom, and very hard to predict when or how that might come. So in that way he was a master, and he did see, it was like being with radiant consciousness that could see every single thing about you. So I used to feel like he saw everything that was great about me, but he also saw everything, all my inadequacies very clearly, and all perhaps my past lives, my future lives, that he saw right through me, everything about me. But then still to feel that his unconditional love was there for you, while seeing you totally, was a huge relief, really. This unconditional love that even my very loving parents could never give me, that kind of unconditional love that Papaji could give. So everyone felt very personally, individually addressed and touched by him. And he would do his best to put you in the moment and get you to awaken in that very second there and now in front of him. Yeah. So that was one of the great things about him.
I suppose I was feeling very inadequate as a child. And so then those masters that were kind of shocking or could spot me out, I would probably feel very naked and very inferior.
Well, yes, I mean, you think that, but then when you actually go and sit in front of him, because he is this all-enlightened, radiant being, somehow you immediately just melts away from you all those feelings of inadequacy, and you feel so seen. So if he's loving you that much, while seeing all that incredible, the problems and the difficulties and the tendencies that you have, then in a way, who am I? What kind of ego am I to say, Pappy, you're wrong. You don't know me, you don't know all those terrible things about me, Who am I to say that? So in a way, you have to accept, you have to get humbled, and you're like, gosh, well, he's loving me so much, how come I can't love myself? Okay, let's give it a go. So I think that was one of his great gifts.
I heard some people, when they speak, they kind of make you see how silly certain little petty things are that you think are so
serious.
huge and so serious, and then you start to laugh, right?
Yes.
But another way might be just that there's so much love there that you just feel so warm,
Exactly. You're just in this huge loving nest. So, yeah. And then he would do that too. You'd have this burning question, that you've fretted about all your life, and you managed to get it down on paper in some way to, give it to him. And then he reads it, and particularly towards the end, when he was in his 80s and he really didn't care what anyone thought anymore, then he would he'd read it out wrong. He'd change words to make it the most funny thing that anyone had ever, and the whole room would burst out laughing, And he just ridicule this terribly serious letter of yours, and make you see that, gosh, and not only is it not it's not my personal issue, it's actually humanity's. Everyone has the same issue, but also it's a joke in the big picture. It doesn't matter at all. So he was very good at that. That's what he did. Yeah.
What works best for me is just to feel like I'm totally received. Somehow I'm just so received, and then I can just spit out my worst or my best and just be received. And then it takes, not all are like that though, because they just want to skip over the bad parts, or they want to, they just said, let's get to the meat of it, These are peripheral arguments. But I don't say go on and on, but I mean, something like that comes to me to say.
But he would also, if you had some terrible thing that you thought was really your terrible secret, he would just sort of, say it out loud in front of everyone and just laugh, And so, how can you, didn't seem so big after a while. Yeah.
But that kind of worked, or was it just the love that worked? I mean, because you can laugh at yourself, but then it doesn't really deconstruct, does it?
Well, I think it can take a lot of the drive out of it, a lot of the, the feeling of this thing that you have to keep to yourself. And as we know, once something is really seen and really brought up into your consciousness, it no longer rules you. It only rules you when it's unconscious and pushed down and hidden. And as soon as you're totally clear and you've totally met it and really experienced it totally, then it loses its charge and fades out all on its own. So things just have to be seen clearly. So, when he might reveal that thing to everyone in the room, then, it's like, okay, better drop it. But I think if it hadn't had that unconditional love behind it, it wouldn't have worked. Yeah. Everyone needed to feel that they were totally loved by him personally, which is what he did.
So people sit with you sometimes.
Yeah.
In a similar mode. And what would you say that you've taken from Papa? Have you taken anything from Papaji? Kind of like that kind of
Yes.
skill level, or that kind of, I don't know, what could I call it?
Yes. So in inspired
touch,
moments,
the
that
touch,
touch comes. It surprises me sometimes how it can come out, or I can just say, somebody I don't know, and then I just find words coming out and saying something, and then later maybe someone will tell me, oh God, that was exactly right for that person who I didn't know. So I used to feel that happened with Papaji too, that it was almost like existence worked through him, and he didn't even necessarily know what he was saying, how appropriate what he was saying to someone was. He didn't know anything about them. So sometimes he'd slam, a young 20-year-old girl who looked so pretty, and you're like, what are you doing, Papaji, But then later you'd hear her circumstances and realize what he'd said was immaculate. So, it was something that came through him almost without his doing even, because he was such an open channel. The wisdom of existence could work through him in mysterious ways.
I guess maybe what I'm asking you is a very interesting question. And it's kind of like if there really is a lineage. I ask you if there's something of Papaji that you really apply, and or is it just the insight that he gave you, and of course the respect you have for him because of that experience. In that case, it's just you, and well, you or the absence of you, however you want to phrase it, but it's just you as a channel that just sees what's appropriate for this moment. So
yes, but I think I did learn I saw Papaji do it in so many ways that I learned to trust how it works. Let's put it like that. I learned to trust, to allow the moment to reveal and the sentences to just come out, and to trust that they'll be appropriate.
yeah, well, I mean, even I do that without any master, because I don't really remember too many things, and so then I'll just get into a sentence, and I won't have anything idea what I'm saying, even 3 words away from what I'm trying to do, and the word won't be coming, and I'll just put a couple of prepositions out and just think something will come in that hole. I mean, it's really right on the edge, but it's not really a spiritual technique or anything. It's just just like that's how we do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think it's a combination of it took being with him, that's for sure. I don't think I would have found freedom on my own so easily. Although, even then, when I was 21, I had a whole experience of freedom where I was on my own. So.
But you've been with other masters too, that we don't have to really go through them all. But I mean, and let's not try to rank them or anything like that. But could it have been, if you had never met Papaji, that you would have just clarified yourself on your next path, or?
Yeah, maybe. One will never know.
Right, you will never know.
Yeah, but I did feel like it was an immense help. That's for sure. And I did incorporate his philosophy into my being, and then it took its own form in me, like as the next generation, if you like. So I don't have all the same belief system as Papaji at all. But
no, how could you? Because,
of course.
You're not in a
and at the same
Indian
time,
culture.
He was very influential.
Right. I think where I want to go, we're talking about solutions in a way, or change, which could look like a solution.
Yeah.
Or otherwise why would there be a change, right? If something begs a change. And so then I had, just to go back a little bit, I had said, okay, spirituality must be the ultimate context breaker, where you can get out of every context and just have a freshness, a creativity.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And so then I'm saying, like, okay, all the spirituality, so much of it, in a way, it seems like people are believing that the solution is in avoiding, is just walking away from the problem. Sort of.
No, I'd say
Yeah.
exactly
Isn't
the
it like that
opposite.
though?
Yeah, I'm sure people do, particularly in the economic system at the
Well,
moment.
not only that. I mean, don't they just say, well, I got a problem, blah blah blah. Well, is it here right now?
Mm.
Right. Oh, when I go to being, it's not here. And I go along day by day, and this problem comes up, and then I just go to being.
Mm.
But so apparently the problem keeps coming up.
Yeah.
So that they're not really. So then it must not be deconstructing, or are we just saying it's chipping away, or it's partially deconstructing, or that's the way to deconstruct problems, is just to sidestep them, or not to? I mean.
No, I think it's to face them head on and really spend some time being in it and looking at it and allowing it to totally encompass you and.
Well, the feeling of it, you should feel it, right? So in
Yes.
that case, you should face it right on, but you're not really supposed to make a plan on building a new world order or a new economic system, right? Or wrong, because that would be in the same context. And then I don't know what happens. I think there's a hocus pocus belief, the thing that, the source fixes things. People say, I'm not the doer. So therefore, when source wants things to work different, source will do it. That kind of thing, You know what I mean?
Yes, I do, yeah.
Is that correct, or is that dangerous, or is that... I mean, the danger, if anything, is a disengagement, no?
Yes. Yeah, I don't think it's time for disengagement anymore. I think that might have been okay some time ago, but I feel like everything's too... the changes that are happening on the planet at the moment are so radical that it needs us to engage in some way and try and look for solutions. So those solutions, however, are only going to really come out of moments of stillness. So you can have your eureka moment. So it's again this being able to step back from everything, and then the answer may actually...
Yeah. No, but I mean, let's get clear, because I mean, I can interpret that in many ways, but okay, you go into stillness and then you get a eureka moment, and then that's the blueprint. You get a blueprint, and then you go out and you get your hammer and nails and you start following that blueprint and you build your house, right? Like that, or no? I mean, or what?
Yeah. I mean, hopefully you get a moment of clarity where it's really clear what you can do.
Well, I was getting this inspiration just lately, is that what the main thing you can do is to pay attention.
Yeah.
Because if you're not paying attention, I mean, then really there's no energy, there's nothing of you in it. And that is a disengagement and kind of a denial. There's a lot of denial in spirituality. Is there?
Well, I don't think I'd really call it denial. I think I'd call it a sort of laissez-faire, allowing what is to be there, and staying. People look at the really big picture of, well, even if the whole of the earth is destroyed, it doesn't, in the big picture, it doesn't matter. It's just one out of another.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't mind saying that the big picture is total BS. That is really the biggest whopper I've ever heard about, the big picture. What about, where's the big picture? I mean, there's not even a humanity. There's only humans. Anything collective is just a theory. Or it's just a convenience. It's just a word, There's no such thing as a herd of sheep. There's only sheep.
But then on the other side, you could say that, every electron within us is resonating with every other electron and everyone else. We are all one, just to take it up on a sideline.
And that sure doesn't do anything either, does it? It's totally, totally weightless.
No, I think if we don't really grasp that yet. We haven't really grasped in our everyday. We still believe we're all separate.
Well,
You know,
I
we still think
believe
we
is
still.
our experience. Now, I don't know. Am I getting too
Well, no, I think it's our
argumentative or what?
conditioning. We're in a Descartesian conditioning where we think, you know, I think, therefore I am, and that there's some kind of your thoughts and my thoughts, and it's all separate. But if we can really grasp that at the very essence of our being, our physical being, that we are the same pulse of energy moving, then, and that a starving woman in Bangladesh does affect the banker on Wall Street, you know, that it does directly affect. If we can really get that deeply,
Yeah, but I don't think
then
you can get it at all by saying it. The getting it probably is from something totally different.
yeah,
You know, and then I think the saying it is just makes us a bunch of automatons. You know, we just are parroting. You know, parroting. We parrot stuff instead of really live it.
yeah, I think it can go either way. I mean, if it's very much our conditioning to look out for yourself and make sure you're okay. And if it was deeply understood, just brought in the schools at an early age in our whole conditioning, that could shift, that we could actually get that everything is affecting everything else. Every living being is affected by every other living thing, whether it be bacteria or plants or fish or whatever. You know, we're all affecting each other.
Well, you know, that I say that it could be.
Mm.
I say that it could be.
Mm.
And you know, but the problem is we don't pay attention. And the way we don't pay attention is we make an interpretation and we pay attention to that interpretation. So that cuts us off, because if we see something that's painful or unjust and we feel it, like you say, that could be the oneness part, like we can resonate with each other. But we can interpret it and say, they deserve it, 3 words can totally insulate us from whatever pain we feel, right? And so then,
but that you can
that's
only
a
say
could
they
be.
deserve it if you think that they're separate from you and they're nothing to, you know, that.
Well, I mean, the part of that's not separate is the feeling. The feeling.
Everybody is a pure being. When every baby is born, they're born clear, and then it's only the environmental circumstances that create somebody who's a serious criminal in some way. You know, so no one deserves it. Everyone's just
I don't know that. I don't have kids, you know, but I've heard
circumstances.
people say that with multiple, you know, that have several kids, and they say they're different as night and day from the day they were born. No, I didn't have any children, so I don't know that for a fact. But then if they're different as night and day, I mean, they have a different personality and a different, it's not only the conditioning, because it's just something that, some kind of a tension that they were born into, some kind of a tension that felt some push, right, that was different, right? I mean, that's the report anyhow of, you know, mothers. There's lots of mothers around, you know, I don't know.
Yeah, well, I think it's a combination of both, but at the same time, you know, if somebody is nurtured and loved and has all their basic requirements taken care of, then they're not actually going to start. They might be different in their personalities, but one of them isn't going to be a mass murderer. You know, I think that's the difference. There can be, of course, as many different varieties as there are people on the planet, but basically man is good.
Yeah, me too. I think that, you know, lately I've been thinking that if everyone had really a creative outlet for their energy, there would be no even addictions, you know. I mean, but it's so frustrating. I lived in Italy for a decade, and so then as a second, you know, I was a foreigner, and you know, the big American is not all he's cracked up to be, you know. Like I was like, let's say I was always underemployed, and so I can feel for people that don't really have a beautiful outlet for their energy where they can make a difference and do the best they can. And then, okay, then there's a lot of belief structures in in place that says, if I withhold, that hurts the other. Instead of not too many people turn around and say, if I withhold, that hurts me. You know, like lately when they say things like anger is a poison you take, thinking that it's going to kill the other, you know. That kind of a deal.
Yeah.
But no, we don't teach that. And then you said in the schools, you know, we could teach that we're all one, but I mean, it could be real easy just to mix the ages instead of stratify the ages. And then the whole thing of mentoring could come in, because you could say, well, there's someone that's 4 years younger than me. I can show them. I felt bad when I was a freshman too, and I could show them some of the ropes, and you know. And then there would be a whole body of knowledge that wouldn't even be held in the school. It would be in the student body, you know, because you know, what I learned through 4 years, I could maybe pass it in 2 years to a freshman and a sophomore, let's say. I don't know if you have that in England, those same kind of grade structures, but for instance. And then they would pass the same thing to younger. With mentoring, I'm saying that there would be a whole living body of knowledge, and a living body of responsibility, and a living body of community that wouldn't be in any book, or the teachers wouldn't know how to even apply it, you know. It would just be something that was in the student body and in the school, but I don't know.
That sounds good. That's an alternative, yeah. But the whole schooling system probably needs to change now. We've got such access to the internet. There's no need to actually, you know, learn rote learning of facts anymore, because you're just going to access
just
it.
Learn how to Google stuff, right?
Yeah. So then there's a lot frees up actually schooling to teach kids a lot more about, you know, how you earn money, how you relate, how you value yourself, how you recognize that you are not separate from those around you, and so on. It's going to need a whole new training of the teachers. So it's probably a generational thing, but it'll come in, you know, as it becomes.
But I mean, is that what we're trying to do? Is build a school out of spirituality, where we're trying to teach people that they're not separate from others?
Well, I think we're trying to teach kids to have.
No, I mean adults, even just spirituality.
Yeah, I mean, spirituality is a dangerous word, but just to be a good human, moral.
Let's
being
just say a good word then. What's a good word? Could we just say wisdom teaching?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, there isn't any, at the moment it's just focused on learning facts. There isn't any wisdom teaching, really. So
Are you still talking in school?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, but what about what we're doing, let's just say, and what we've done so long? Going to satsang, being a seeker and all that stuff. In a way, we're in a school, right? What are we doing?
Giving ourselves time just to be quiet and take time out from our busy minds, so we get a chance to see beyond that.
Is that enough?
It's a help, isn't it?
I guess we could go out and get votes, you know, say, were you helped by the last 10 years? You know, but people get more and more frantic too. I don't know what it helps, you know. Sometimes they get totally dissatisfied with regular, everyday life. Right?
Yeah. Well, I don't know what to say about that. Talking about the evolution of consciousness, we've started out as, you know, Homo erectus and Homo sapien, these primitive men, and there clearly is an evolution that's going on. So recently they started calling it Homo sapiens sapien. But I like Barbara Marx Hubbard's expression, which is we're coming into Homo universalis. How does she say? Universalis. And then various different masters have talked in different ways. Teilhard de Chardin called it Homo progressivus, and Sri Aurobindo Gnostic humans, and John White Homo noeticus. So there's this awareness that this kind of quantum transformation happening in the human species, that it isn't just a Darwinian clean pattern of gradual evolution, but actually makes huge leaps and bounds. So instead of going on a clear path, a steady path, it goes exponentially every now and then. And it seems like when we're looking at a lot of the different traditional societies like the Mayans and the Hopis, and when we look at the all sorts of traditional religions, they're saying that there would come a time when there could be a very quick evolution in consciousness. So I think that is now, really, is in this.
Isn't that funny that there seems to be these jumps? I mean, like, because if you were just a plain Darwinian, you would say that it would be gradual, because you're just, the way we sometimes explain it, we explain it by mutation and selection.
Yes.
Mutation, selection, but in that formula there's really no room for a jump. And some of these Christians that do what they call creation, they say that God created all these different, and they're saying, well, there would be a smooth transition if there was really evolution, so these must be a new kind of species or something. Or what do you say to an argument like that?
Oh,
but it is kind of curious that it jumps in steps.
Yeah, I think you get this 100th monkey effect. You familiar with that?
I've heard about that.
That story. It was taken from some anthropologists working on the islands around Japan in the late 40s, and they were watching a group of monkeys on a small desert island, and realized that the young female monkeys took their sweet potatoes and washed them before they ate them in the river to get rid of the dirt. So quickly after that, the older female monkeys got it, then the young men monkeys, and finally the old men monkeys, who took the longest to make the shift. But simultaneously on another island, the same thing was happening. So there was you get this 100th monkey effect. As soon as 100 monkeys had got it on that small island, it happened in another island. So without any connection. So in that way, when we get to a state of evolutionary consciousness where a certain proportion of us have, say, experienced in some way, directly experienced the truth of our being, then suddenly everyone can get it. And that it only needs this 0.01%, so it only needs 700,000 of us at the moment out of the 7 billion to get that, for the whole 7 billion to get it. So that's how the shifts jump.
Oh yeah, that's really interesting. You know, I've heard about that with the monkeys in the islands, and that, you know, I guess on the one island the monkeys were teaching each other how to do it, and by imitation, right?
Yeah.
But then when they all were doing it on that island regularly, somehow, without space or time, and there's no telegraph, monkey telegraph or anything, without space or time, if anything you could say, well, okay, humans were watching them, and they were watching the other animals on the other island, and maybe it passed through the human mindset, because they were saying, oh look, these guys don't do that. And then they did, you know, but they were picturing it or something. But otherwise, without space and time, somehow there's something else that's like a wormhole or something that doesn't go, you know, where we are connected also there, you know.
But haven't we proved that in physics now? You could explain that better than me, where electron can actually be in electron A and electron... You get electron A and you divide it into A and B, and then they both can have the same elements to them, even though they're totally separated by distance.
Yeah, I've heard of those experiments, you know, a little bit about...
So we know on the molecular level that works. So why shouldn't it work with us? Why would it need to go via human awareness? We're not the only.
It's so tiny compared
beings.
to what we're talking about. I don't know. You know, it's so tiny. I don't believe it. The macro and micro are so far apart when they're talking about physics. That's what gives doubts to me.
Yes, but when you look at if you put the micro and the macro on a scalar graph, and actually look and do the, I can't express this very well, but actually do the, calculate the formula for take the average, for example, of all stars. So you get the stellar average, and you put it on the graph, and you take the average of all atoms and put it on a graph, and you take Planck's scale and put it on the graph, and you go right out into as far as you can. They're all actually having the same resonance. So they are all linked in with the same energetic pathway.
Yeah. I guess I'm not that qualified to talk about science. So I have my ideas, but I don't want to talk too much about. Sometimes I spout it out too, but I admit it, But anyhow, I don't want to make this about me spouting out things I don't know about. But
but anyway, I think we will. It will be able to be proved scientifically soon, with proper mathematical equations, that we are very much all one, and when that is established, then our paradigm of consciousness can shift.
But just by someone telling us, will that be enough?
Well, we all believed the Earth was flat, and then somebody told us, Copernicus told us, the Earth was round, and I'm sure it took 100 years before the whole world got it. But nowadays with the internet, it might take a week.
Well, I don't know, but I mean, no, wait a minute. Okay, look, the world was flat, and then the world was round, and then guys went around the Earth and stuff like that. But how did that affect anyone? That didn't really change their consciousness, did it? I mean, the guy on our farm or something, or the guy in the village, or the blacksmith or something, what did he care, flat or round? I'm just making horseshoes.
Yeah, but he probably started feeling, I mean, you and I, for example, we probably don't feel we feel international, no? We don't particularly feel identified with our country, never mind our village.
True.
So we're international, and I also have a strong belief that there are many, many different sorts of civilizations out in the various galaxies. So I'm starting to feel that's a fairly new thing in me, that awareness of how there are many other living species on other planets. So I'm starting to feel like my world barrier is expanding. I'm starting to go a little bit more universal. It's fairly new for me that I'm just a brother and sister of one of millions of different other species in the whole multiverse, out there. So I'm going out again. So, in that same way, just that simple cobbler, he started to realize, wow, well, actually, this whole huge round world, and maybe it expanded him slightly. So, I'm sure it has its subtle effects.
That would be subtle, okay.
Super practical every day, you're making your shoes.
No, but okay, but we're saying something really more fundamental, because we're saying science could tell us that we're not separate. Yes. And that we have to really change how we behave with other people, all people, and somehow institutionally also we have to include minorities and underprivileged.
Absolutely.
But somehow,
we can't,
and they can't take advantage of it somehow.
Yeah,
somehow that has to be
suffering.
That too, right? Because we had lived in welfare societies, and they never worked either. See, and people just said, even here in Australia, I'll bet you anything, And people have told me about Canada, and they said, well, you get assistance if you're unemployed. And in so many ways that's a good thing, but in so many ways it makes the people very dull. Even in satsang, people have told me when I go to America, people really want to get up there and really want to explore and find themselves, and when I'm in Canada, they're just kind of laying back and waiting for tomorrow. Going to the post office to get their check. So then I don't know, there's a good part and the bad, there's a human part and then there's a bad part to it.
Yeah, but the thing is, there must be a way to shift society so everyone can be doing what really fulfills them, and that there doesn't need to be 5 billion people who are, struggling for clean water and food every day. And so once we really get in the depths of our beings that we're one, and not just as some sort of ideological concept, then we're going to start acting on that. And so, we won't need to have 50% of the world's wealth in 1% of the people's, actually 40% of the world's wealth in 1% of the people's hands, and 50% of it in 2%. So, things can start, and those people are probably fairly unhappy too. Their money doesn't buy them happiness. So they're not going to be able to sit with that so well, and need to to share it. So there is.
So in
enough
other
food
words,
and
that wealth
water.
is not cherished, and somehow it's not stewarded in a way because those people are kind of tense and
Yeah.
maybe who could.
And they're
It's
not-
hard to generalize,
And
though,
they're
isn't
not
it?
fully aware that their being is being affected by the hungry lady in Biafra.
Yeah. No, but that's what we do with concepts. Concepts separate us.
But they need to, it needs to be so deeply ingrained that it's part of our being, not just a concept anymore.
Well, I'm just saying it's a concept that we're separate too. And like when I said they deserve
Yes.
it. Okay, in Biafra they deserve it some reason.
Yeah,
And we
but
could just say that
I
they're.
don't think you can ever say that, those two
you-
words. They deserve it.
Well, I mean, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying you can. I'm just saying that they. Those are words that work a lot of magic, as far as separating things. And how would you
Yes.
say it? You'd say, well, because their government is corrupt, and it's their government. They do it to themselves. You'd start saying things like that, right? And then you wouldn't feel any pain anymore. You would be insulated. Or you wouldn't feel.
Yes. Yeah, I just feel like there's got to be a way around it. There's got to be some solution where there is enough resources for everyone on the planet, and how do we work out how to?
Let's go
start
back just
making
to
that
wisdom
happen.
teaching then, because that's the ultimate. I don't know. Do you like it when I say that? That's the ultimate getting out of the context, right? Because you're even getting out of the context of the manifest world. You're talking about the context of space and potentiality. And so then, in that world, and if there's a world that's not equal, that could be made out of potentiality, then in that pure world of potentiality, there's also a world of egalitarian world that could be made out of that. So I mean, but then the only trick is like, how do I get from here to there? In the manifest world, it seems like so many things have to shatter in order to make that happen. But I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think sometimes the old does need to shatter to allow the space for the new to come in. So we can actually celebrate if some old systems start shattering, because it does allow space for the new to come in.
I think we have to watch it because, it's easy to say, well, if something shatters, I can celebrate that too. Okay, that's one thing, and that's very pure and very wise. But if you're just saying, oh, I'm going to be laissez-faire, I'm going to be hands-off, or I'm not going to try to correct this situation, I'm going to somehow just ignore it. And then I'll just say, see, I told you so. It's not really a very good contribution, just to say I was a prophet. Why weren't you there working to try to organize or something? I'm not saying you, of course. I think you are organizing, so that. But I'm just talking about
the great prophets had. I mean, they're the only names that live on. 2,500 years. You're still talking about Buddha. So they had some amazing impact on the well-being and happiness of many people, or we wouldn't still remember them.
No, I'm not talking about prophets. I'm just saying if all you do is ignore problems, and then when they fire up, when they collapse, you say, I knew it all along, I told you so, then you're a little prophet. You're setting yourself up as I'm just saying that's the best you could do to contribute. You just say, I told you so.
Yes.
But you can't be there to really try to
but
repair
I think
it.
there is a place for those amongst us who want to be just quiet and not doing anything, and just being in their metaphorical cave or living. But then we don't need them to come out afterwards and say, I told you so. No, that's not their role. Their role is just to be, and that has a great role. It's not everyone doesn't have to be out there.
Proactive.
Yeah. No, there's space for it all. There's room for all of us. But I do think it's important times at the moment that as many of us that can be proactive as possible do.
Well, if you were in your cave and paying attention to what happened, and you were feeling it, and feeling that pain, I would say that was a huge contribution, But if you're there just blanked out, in some kind of numbness, and saying, okay, and especially if you're saying, oh, this numbness is awareness, actually, you wouldn't say it numbness. You just say, no, I'm in awareness. But really it's numbness, because, who knew? I bought a house in 2008. And that's just a couple of months later they did the bank bailout. I bought a house and I was totally numb. I didn't know what in the hell was going on. I bought it at the worst time, really. And like, ever since I've lost money on that house. You know, I like the house and I like living there, but you know, I was numb to what was happening because I was somehow believed that I could be in my cave, right? Not in a cave of meditation and stuff, but in a cave of unawareness, or just kind of a cave of resignment, you know, because I was resigned that the news is false, you know. It's all owned by those guys, and those guys are only 5 companies, and they're all telling us and I didn't listen to any, but I mean, I'm not so sure there would have been any news there if I did listen to it, but somehow I just am confessing that, I mean, I was not a participant.
Yeah, well, there you go, and you paid the price by losing money on your house ever since. So it's good to have your finger on the trigger and be aware of. I mean, I think there is a vast sheepdom going on where everyone just listens to the 5 authorities of news and believes that that's it, and don't realize that they're only actually sharing the news that they choose to share from the perspective that they choose to share it, and that there's a whole other realm out there that, you know, you can make yourself aware of if you want to. So room for improvement. But this is a good area in Australia because there is a lot of, I think there is quite a lot of awareness of what's going on and how we may need to step out of the controls of Big Brother and free ourselves and make ourselves aware of situations.
I think Australia as a whole has got some blind spots, and I'm just, you know, I'm not really trying to, somehow when you come in from the outside you can see some things, so I'm not trying to poke fault or say that it's an inferior society in any way, but I did hear some stories about teenage suicide that is really pretty shocking, and whether it's just machoism or somehow it's not being connected with, on some level society is so individual that you can't really say what's disappointing about life, and then you eat that and it eats you, and then
I'm sure that childhood suicides aren't anything like as much as they are in Japan. I'm sure there are a lot less here than they're probably one of the least, even if there must be some, but I'm sure they're one of the, there wouldn't be that many. Australians tend to be a bit more laid back than Europeans anyway.
Maybe it was drugs. I don't know. I just heard someone that said 3 of his friends committed suicide in 1 month.
Wow. In one of the cities, or?
Out here.
I didn't hear that. I'm sure we would have all heard if there'd been.
Well,
there was one kid who committed suicide, but I'm sure I would have heard if there'd been 2 others of his friends. But anyway.
Well, there was.
Whatever. Yeah.
Of course, then there's a blind spot of the Aborigines.
Yeah, that could do with a lot of healing. Yeah. Yeah, they have I think we're becoming a little bit more aware that they actually have something that they can teach us as well, that it can be a two-way exchange. But it hasn't been like that, that's for sure. We only stopped the stolen generation of taking children away from their Aborigine parents. I think it was only stopped in the early 70s. So it's quite very recent, even more recent than America's story with the American Indians. Yeah. So
I think these blind spots are great to look at, you know, because I think that when we're able to lift them out from under the covers and sort of see them, I think a great clarity is going to come to us. You know, and some of these, maybe they're symbolic, or maybe they're, but something about the collective blinding and ignoring goes way deeper than just what we're trying to ignore. We ignore everything when we numb. Right? Because like a lot of times people say, well, I was hurt in love or something like that. But then when you cut that out and numb to that, then there's no love in your life from any corner, right? And it's the same thing with clarity, when you take clarity away from some place that is kind of like, well, that we don't talk about that, and then maybe that's the whole syndrome of not knowing ourselves, is that somehow that blindness or that choosing to push something away is probably a big part of it. Just my theory of the moment, I guess. There's so much to talk about, and all of it really relates to life, right? We can talk about certain details, and then somehow we can just tie it back into how we feel with our fellow man, or how our society works, or actually what is spiritual awakening. I mean, all these things, they're really, in some senses, there is no separation, because everything is tied, and our consciousness somehow, it seems, I don't know, it strikes that there's really nothing to leave out. And I think that a lot of people are starting to be more inclusive. I think I can remember times when everyone I knew, and myself also, I thought that the key to life was to just focus down on that good part, and whatever that would be. I choose peace, right, instead of this turmoil, somehow, and to slice up life and just say, where are the good parts? Let's take the fruits, right?
Yeah, so I think we need to look at it all, don't we? And at least have it in our awareness, all of it, as much as we can.
Yeah. A general awareness, not in the sense of let's see, that's an Italian word. Like not an encyclopedia of knowledge or something like that, but somehow just taking a look. So, I don't know, with so many things to talk about, I don't know, I wonder what we'll be talking about next. Thank you, Pratima.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Richard.
Yeah. Really, you're an inspiration to teach us about what's happening in Australia and kind of like what's possible for the rest of the world, because you guys are going to prove it.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah.
Let's see, I think things will manifest out in the next few years fairly clearly. Yeah, I like to come from the astrological point of view, and I actually, it's April 2015 that we leave the present period we're in, so I think by then we may have found a few new systems that work better for everyone. That's what time will tell.
Yeah, that's exciting. I don't really think of it that way, but I do think of things are so intense. And then things that are totally unexpected are happening, which is like Arab Spring and Occupy and all that stuff. You know, and
astrologically you can put it all down to a Uranus, Pluto, Saturn aspect that's been going on for the last few years. So that's what ends, in fact, in April 2015. So I think this period things will have settled down. We'll settle down after that. So we may have still a few more years of, April the 15th, still a little ways.
Oh yeah, wow, it's exciting. So it's so great to be here and to be here in this period, if it's and to participate fully in it. Really try to put all I know that's positive, and let's just say life affirming into these next few years. That's a great challenge.
Yes, and if I might say so, make yourself as self-sufficient as you can, so you're as independent from the state and from things being supplied to you. So in whatever you can do towards self-sustainability for your own water, power and food, I'd do everything you can towards that. And then, can be independent.
So we're hearing there's going to be some shock waves. So anyhow, maybe it's not all going to be pretty. But
yeah, no, I don't think it'll all be pretty. I think we may have a bit of accumulation next year, 2012. It's not being talked about or getting all this publicity in the film world for nothing, you know. So
Right.
there's something there.
maybe just talking about it is going to make it happen, you know, somehow. I don't know.
Well, maybe talking about it can also bring it into more people's awareness, so that they're actually prepared and not totally caught by surprise. So yes, as much as you can say we create our own reality by our thought forms, but you know, there's still only 2% of the world's population who might say you need to get self-sustainable right now. So it's hardly a majority thought wave.
Mm.
So I would like to put that out to people, to try and be as self-sustainable as you can. And there's still a little bit of time, but not much,
Oh, yeah.
so you need to get onto it.
Thank you, thank you. You know, I take it as totally you're caring toward us.
Yes, that's the message. I do try and share that a lot with people.
Thank you, Pratima.
Yeah. Okay.
Until
thank
next
you.
time.
Okay, yes. Arrivederci.
Arrivederci. Thank you, everyone, for checking us out. And I'm sure we'll talk more with Pratima, see what comes up. Australia is so rich and so much. Well, but I'll know for sure day by day. So goodbye.